the kid going to public school?
I have to tell you that I don't like the word normal. I'm very sorry. But how do you define normal, you know? But what I'm saying is that they have strength that can be developed. If had you been to our dinner last night, you know, I was moved to tears with the kids' ability to walk on the runway with Malaysian top models like Amber Chia and Chelsea. And then we have 3 kids who played the piano, and we have an auction of their arts and ceramic pieces. Look at how much they can achieve. But I have to tell you, these children, I'm so sorry, Mr. Lim, they come from middle-class families who can afford to send them to music classes, who can afford them to art classes. What about our kids in the rural areas, in the kampongs, in the interior? You know, and yesterday I saw an article by interviewing a doctor from Ipoh in the New Straits Times, and the doctor said, "Oh, I'm seeing a new form of autism in Malaysia, whereby the parents who come and see me, they're mainly Chinese, they're mainly middle class, they're mainly, you know, mothers who are working. Of course, these are the group of people who have the awareness and know where to look for doctors and such, right?" I have met a parent who is working in the government sector as a clerk. So I bet, she doesn't have the awareness. And her child was at that time 9 years old, and she's been going to the hospital for 4 years, and nobody in the hospital informed her that her child has autism. She didn't know. Nobody told her that her child has autism.
I have to stop you here to put another point, to ask you another question, and this is about autism itself. Does it discriminate? Is it predominantly more in the Chinese, Malays, Indians?
No. Autism does not, it will hit you no matter whether you're Malay or Chinese or Indian, whatever. It does not discriminate. But there are more boys who have autism than girls.
And why is
the
that?
ratio is 4 to 1. Well, the research, most of the research on autism, they are still not conclusive. But there is a theory that boys have the XY chromosome and girls have the XX chromosome, and is the
genetic issues.
Yeah, it's a genetic issues.
Right. Let's talk about the warning signs that a child may be suffering from autism. Mr. Lim?
Well, speaking from experience, I don't have the doctorate like Dr. Hasnah has.
Never mind. Let's speak from experience. It's a good place to start.
All right. Now, the first thing that I've observed, I'll be speaking from my own case. When I look at my son, he's like isolated in a world of his own. He doesn't have any interaction, be it with the parents or with his siblings or with anyone. And then the second thing is, when you look at him, sometimes you feel that he does not, for parents, we like to hug our kids. When you have that interaction, he pulls away. And he feels like, this is too painful for him to take. These are the few things that we have. But for my particular son, we observed ever since he was born, he had problems passing motion, hard stools. We do not know what was wrong. We tried everything until we decided to take him up for milk. And then, wow, it makes a lot of difference.
I mean, the doctors would have put him on Dufalac for quite a while.
No, this was actually the parents experimenting, you see. We are just, and then people say,
no choice.
We got no choice. We don't
trial
have a doctorate.
Trial and error, yeah.
So we tried that, and then later on, like what we said, we went all the rounds to see all the specialists, and then we decided it looks like, that could be the issue. We saw one doctor, the doctor says, look, it could be an issue. So while waiting to have a proper diagnosis, we said, let's not waste time anymore. Let's go for the intervention. Do what we can. If you're wrong, so be it. But if you're right, we would not have wasted time. So that was our approach at that time.
Right.
Time is very important.
And upon finding out or discovering that your child was suffering from autism, how did you take it as a parent, you, your wife, people around you?
Well, first of all,
how broken were you? To say that you're not broken, that would be wrong, but at some point you would have been like, oh man, why did this happen to me? Yeah?
Yeah, we went through a series of emotions. The first that I can imagine was grief. Why did this happen? You start blaming everything. The doctor didn't do a good job, your wife, your spouse, and all those things. Then, in the midst of everything, you realize that the clock is ticking. Then there's an urgency. So you are grappling with a lot of conflicting emotions. The need to grieve, and then the need to do something urgent. And then when you come to it, there is not much help here. And then at that time we didn't know that we could reach out to other parents.
Right, I have to stop you here to find out about your employment. Were you employed by some organization at that time? Were you working for some company? Or were you running your own business?
At that time I was working for a company. I'm an
Did they
engineer.
understand the predicament you were in when every time you had to go back and be with your son?
Well, in this particular case, it is like when you first find out about it, that you're afraid. Look, what's happening? You're worried about that social stigma. What's happening to your son? Did you all do something wrong and all those stuff? So you're pretty much isolated. You try to maintain a facade that everything is normal. You go life as business as usual, but inside you're just completely at sea. That was how I was going through. That was where, because of my own personal experience, that's why I think PR4A is good in the sense that it's a parent support. We help parents who are encountering autism.
The thing is, not many people can understand autism. I remember when my family first got involved with PR4A, it was just me going to meetings. And then one day PR4A organized a talk where we invited a speaker from the US. And I said to my husband, no, we'll have to find a babysitter. You need to come because you need to listen. And he went to a PR4A gathering for the first time. And there he found other men, fathers who have children with autism. And as we were driving home, he said, how relieved I am to find another man who I can talk to about this. It was such a huge relief for him. Finally, because he couldn't talk about it to his workmates or even family members don't understand. It took at least 2-3 years for my family members to understand. It's a constant education for them, and we have to keep on explaining to them. When my son was young, he has a hyperactivity, so we may have to make sure that each time we visit relatives, the door would have to be locked because my son would bolt out the doors and jump into the parit longkang or go on the roads and all that. So it's difficult for us to go for family gatherings. We have to say, somebody would go out the door, leave the door ajar and say, oh, can you shut the door? They say, why do we keep the door closed? Let some air in. We have to explain. We have to explain really everything.
Right. When we talk about causes of autism, what is the biggest cause of autism?
Well,
in Malaysia.
No. It's a global issue.
It's a global issue.
It's a global issue. Well, maybe before we talk about the causes, maybe I would like to talk about the raising numbers.
Please
the raising numbers. Okay, in the late 80s and the early 90s, the prevalence rate for autism was 3 or 4 in 10,000.
3 or 4 in 10,000.
But that was then. Now the latest numbers released by the US government is 1 in 150. Or 1 in 90 boys, because it's more prevalent in boys. So imagine, when I lecture to my students, in my lecture hall there's 160 of them. I said, in the future when you all get married, one of you will have a child with autism. That really shocked them, the idea of the number. So why is the increase? The US government is really alarmed about it, and they're pumping a lot of dollars into research. But up till now, most of the research are conclusive. They suspect, but it's not, they can't say for sure what are the causes. But some of the things that they think might cause autism is genetics, because they found that if you have a child with autism, the chances of you having another child with autism is higher than families who do not have kids with autism. And it could also be the environment. They're very concerned about toxic dumpings in the environment, especially mercury, because mercury is bad. And mercury in the buildings built in the 60s and 70s, they have mercury in the paints. And the other thing that they are talking about, and this is one of the most controversial